Alright, hello, what's up guys? I'm back, Zach Rowe with LB Certified Fitness, and I'm doing another video. Again, this one somewhat kind of relates to a couple of concepts that we talked about in the previous two episodes, but it's kind of own standalone thing, and it's about oxygen uptake and EPOC and how that relates to calorie expenditure and weight loss. Alright, so this is less athletically based and more weight loss based, more of your general client. So if you're looking for weight loss, this is good because EPOC is a big kind of thing that people talk about a lot, and it's misunderstood and misrepresented. So we'll get into it. So I have a couple of charts here, and a couple of terms, or vocabulary terms, if you will. So first I'll go over these two graphs, and these are a little overwhelming, a little mind flood. Don't worry, we'll break it down into pieces. First we'll start with the one on the left, and this is our LIST chart, and LIST stands for low intensity steady state cardio. So low intensity steady state cardio, referring back to my other video, is going to be like that 65 to 75 range, kind of right around there. That recovery, that aerobic base training, okay? So not very challenging, pretty sub-maximal to your max heart rate, 65 to 75, all right? So you have your rest, where, you're not doing anything. Exercise starts right here. We just have for 15 minutes. Really, when you're doing lists, you're probably going to be doing longer than that, but that's just what the graph, that's what we have written down, all right? Now, you can see this goes across here, and this is your VO2. Referring back to my last video, that's your oxygen uptake. So your VO2 max is up here, but your oxygen uptake required for the exercise is right here, kind of a little bit above half. Alright, do we see that? That's steady state, where you could maintain that intensity theoretically forever as long as you're fueling properly. Alright? That's your steady state. And you can see this oxygen deficit right here, that shaded part. That is because you have the oxygen deficit because your aerobic system doesn't start up right away. Right? We have our anaerobic systems first that produce energy, and it takes a little bit of time to get the oxidation going and your aerobic system's working. Right? Aerobic glycolysis and your oxidation. Before that, it is like your ATP, PC, muscle glycogen, all those kind of things. It takes a little bit of time, but your intensity isn't very high, so this deficit's not very high. So yeah, and then so you do your exercise, and eventually it steadies out. Those systems start to work, right? And then you have to kind of pay back that deficit with the oxygen debt, or EPOC. EPOC stands for excess exercise oxygen consumption, okay? And so see, it's relatively, we'll get to this one in a second, but you see it's relatively smaller EPOC, your oxygen debt, compared to our HIIT here, which we'll get to in a second. But because your deficit wasn't very high, you don't have to repay back much of a debt at the end, oxygen-wise. So you can kind of think it financially. You don't take a very big loan, then you don't have to pay back a very high debt, right? You have a big loan, you pay back a lot more debt, okay? And that's the recovery. Relatively simple. I feel like that's, it is what it is, So now, oh yeah, well no, we'll get to that in a second. Now we'll go over to the HIIT one, which is a little bit more confusing. So we have our VO2, right, our oxygen uptake. Right here in the middle is our VO2 max. That's our maximal oxygen uptake. But then we're doing HIIT. This is the HIIT one. It stands for high intensity interval training, which is a 1 minute extra. Well, you can do it for relatively short periods of time, but for here we have a minute. The oxygen required for that exercise is much higher, over 100%. All right. For the study that I'll be going over, they did like 130% over VO2 max. So supramaximal work, whatever it is, 110, 120, 130, you're high. So you can see this giant O2 deficit that you're creating, right? Where your aerobic system's not kicked in at all. It's purely anaerobic, right? Because your anaerobic systems fuel the exercise for the first couple of minutes before it probably takes about it depends on the person and how you train your systems, but 2 to 3 minutes before your aerobic glycolysis starts to kick in. So therefore, when you are completed and you're recovering, you have a much higher oxygen debt, or EPOC. Now, a lot of fitness professionals, what they kind of started to say is, oh, you don't have time for regular cardio, lifts, or moderate intensity steady state, just do HIIT because of the benefits of EPOC, and you get a huge calorie expenditure after you exercise from this oxygen debt, because your heart rate and your breathing rate is elevated for a certain period of time after, because you need to pay back that debt, essentially, right? And it's kind of like this magical exercise to lose weight because of all this calorie expenditure that you're doing, right? When really that is not the case. All right, it's not that considerable. So I have the study here. I'll try and post it up on a little screenshot of the abstract, so you can take a look at it. I'll try and figure out how to do that and put it in a YouTube video. But I'll also link the study to the abstract in the description or whatever. So I'll just kind of set up this a little kind of sciencey, but it's important to know. So they compared energy expenditure during HIIT, and for this one they did moderate intensity steady state, and they used 11 young healthy women. Okay, it's important to know what kind of people they're having doing these studies, right? Healthy people versus sedentary, men versus women, this, that, and the other. So 11 young healthy women. So for the HIIT, what they did was a Tabata protocol, which is actually a little bit different than this. But Tabata is essentially 8 rounds of 20 seconds on and 10 seconds off. So a 2-to-1 work ratio for a total of 4 minutes of work. And like I said, it was at 130% of VO2 max. Then they did moderate intensity steady state for 30 minutes at 90 to 95% of the second ventilatory threshold, which is your anaerobic threshold. If you watch the other video, your anaerobic threshold is where you begin to accumulate more lactate than you can clear. So this is slightly below second ventilatory threshold, 90 to 95%, where they're able to clear it, and theoretically, again, as long as you're feeling properly, do that indefinitely, because you're not going over that second ventilatory threshold. So total energy expenditure during moderate steady state was higher at 228 calories, which makes sense, and then compared to the HIIT at 40 calories. All right, but then this is a good point to bring up. Energy expenditure per minute was higher for HIIT at 10 calories per minute compared to moderate intensity at 8 calories per minute. All right, so that's important to consider. That calories per minute is higher because obviously, of course, the moderate intensity steady state is going to be higher because you're doing it for longer, right? In total calorie expenditure. And so if you did HIIT for as long as you did the moderate intensity, you would have as high of a calorie expenditure. Thing is, it's hard to do HIIT. You simply can't do HIIT for as long as you can do steady state. It's much more intense on the body and just the fatigue and the stress that you're putting on your joints and this and that. You can only do HIIT for so much, for so long before you have technical breakdown of what you're trying to perform, whether it's running, swimming, any kind of aerobic exercise, or say you're doing more of a strength training movement for your HIIT training, such as like squats, hip hinges, whatever it may be. It doesn't really matter. And then also, you can't do it in succession because you're gonna have a lot more lactate or a metabolic acidosis, which is gonna break down the muscle, and you're gonna feel, unless you're extremely well conditioned, you're gonna feel much more sore the next day, and you're gonna have to let your body recover. As opposed to moderate intensity steady state or just LISS, low intensity steady state, you can you can do it every day or every other day. You could do maybe not every single day, like 6 days a week. I don't really recommend you working out more than 6 days a week, or yeah, more than 6 days a week really. But you can do it much more frequently, as opposed to HIIT. You can maybe fit in like a legit HIIT training session like 3 times a week, where you could do moderate intensity steady state or low intensity steady state 6 days a week. So that's something to consider. So your calorie expenditure per minute is going to be higher, but you can do the lower intensity stuff a lot more. So the more you do it, the more calorie expenditure you're going to be having, right? So yeah. And then EPOC, the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, had not much of a difference in total calorie expenditure between the moderate intensity and the high intensity. So, which is the exact opposite of what a lot of like fitness professionals. Also, the oxygen uptake had returned to baseline after 15 minutes of exercise. So both had recovered oxygen uptake where it wasn't elevated for a super long prolonged period of time. Therefore, the moderate intensity steady state resulted in higher total energy expenditure. And when trying to exercise for weight loss, it's just all about your calories in versus calories out, right? You want to keep those expended calories as high as possible. So, where was I going? Oh yeah, so oftentimes HIIT is marketed as like, oh, you don't have a lot of time to work out, you can squeeze this little HIIT workout in, like the 7-minute or 10-minute or 15-minute kind of HIIT workout in, or whatever. Granted, now that's better than nothing, but it's the wrong narrative. You have to make time to exercise, all right? There's no getting around it and just doing this like secret little thing where you work out less time and get the same kind of benefits as people that put in the time. You need to put in the time. You need to make the time. It's been a thing for a really long time. All kind of health organizations and fitness organizations recommend 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular activity per week. All right. If you can't make the time to do that, there's something you need to reshift and reevaluate and change what you value in your life to make that time. Is my personal opinion. If you just simply can't make the time, unless you're like a parent working like 50 hours a week and you gotta like feed your family and this, that, and the other, and there's certain kind of situations where you gotta get shit done, but a lot of people are just lazy, really is what it is. You don't want to do that, and you convince yourself that you don't have to by doing some other kind of thing that you think is good, but it's just scientifically not as beneficial. So EPOC is not the special kind of answer to weight loss. It's always has been and always will. Is law of thermodynamics. Calories in versus calories out. There's no way getting around that. You have to put in the work, and you're just much better off sticking with the low intensity or the moderate intensity steady state to expend those calories. But it takes time. That's the moral of the story here. You gotta make time and put in the time. There's no secrets to getting around it. Alright? If you want to check out the study that I was referring to myself, like I said, I'll put it down in the description. That's it. If you have any questions about this kind of concept of EPOC and oxygen uptake and whatnot, feel free to ask. And that's it. I'm Zach Rowe. This has been LB Certified Fitness. Check out my websites, my social media stuff I'll have linked down below. Check out my podcast with Josh, where we talk about this kind of stuff. Not this specifically, but other training related things. And yeah, that's it. Peace.